Hi, my name is John Zimmerman. I'm the Vice President of the Miami Valley Fair Housing Center. And I'm glad to be back today to do the second part of a two-part series of videos on criminal background checks and their intersection with fair housing guidance. And in April of 2022, this year, which is Fair Housing Month, President Biden also declared April as Second Chance Month. And his declaration emphasized the importance of helping people who have had criminal involvement and after they're out of incarceration to re-enter society, reunite with their families, and find stable and safe homes. At the same time that he did this, Secretary Fudge of HUD also put out a mandate, and she wanted to see that in HUD programs that prevent individuals with criminal histories from finding housing, that she wanted to eliminate any necessary barriers. And she wrote, quote, "I am directing all relevant HUD program offices to, within 6 months of the date of this memorandum, identify all existing HUD regulations, guidance documents, and other policies that may pose barriers to housing for persons with criminal histories." And then in June, HUD issued a follow-up memorandum. Now, this memorandum was to all fair housing organizations who assist victims of housing discrimination. And a link to this video is in the notes on the YouTube. So this memo highlights several things. They wanted investigators to be aware of ways in which criminal background screening policies and practices can violate the Fair Housing Act. They wanted to provide investigators with tips on how to conduct those investigations, and then for housing providers, set out some best practices to those housing providers when conducting screening and using criminal history restrictions. So I'm going to give you just a little bit out of the memo, and hopefully then it piques your interest so that you would go to the link to the video and take a look at the entire memorandum. So first of all, they had some red flag examples. And one example was, it says, housing providers commonly use tenant screening companies that provide background checks that are often inaccurate, incomplete, and have no relationship to whether someone will be a good tenant. This information is then used to deny a qualified tenant. And we've seen that happen. There was a woman who lived up in the Northeast, and her son had been in a bad accident, and he was in a nursing home, and she wanted to bring him back to her home. And because of the way he was over 18, so the landlord ran a criminal background check, and he was denied. And the company that ran it failed to provide both the tenant and the landlord with any information of why it was being denied. And they later found out that he had had a shoplifting arrest once, never a conviction because it was thrown out of court, and that he was held up from living in this house for a whole year. So again, these credit criminal background reports can be inaccurate. Another example, housing providers sometimes evict people based on criminal activity, and it has no bearing on their tenancy. And we've also seen entire families, because of a criminal activity of one person, not be allowed to get into housing because of that one person's criminal activity. Or we've seen that there was a household member who was a victim of a crime that occurred at or near their home, and then the family got evicted, even though they were the victim. And so we see that happen sometimes with people who are victims of domestic violence. And it's completely inappropriate to go after the victim when, in fact, someone should be going after the perpetrator. So there are some examples of evidence that could support a finding of reasonable cause that discrimination occurred, and I'm going to read you just a couple of them, and we'll put them up on the screen. For example, a housing provider routinely advises Native American applicants about a criminal record screening policy, but does not advise white applicants about the policy. A housing provider rejected a Hispanic applicant based on his criminal record, but rented to a white applicant with a comparable criminal record. And so sometimes what we've seen out in the field is that some landlords will coach white applicants on how to get around their own policies, but they never coach minority applicants. And the Fair Housing Act says that we have to have the same terms and conditions for all of our tenants based on protected class. And if you're coaching one set of people and not another, those are different terms and conditions. A property manager discouraged a black applicant with a criminal record from applying, saying their record likely would lead to a rejection, but encouraged a white individual with a comparable criminal record to apply, saying that it was possible the record would not turn up, and offering them an application form. So these are some just some tips on this, and if housing providers and different people that see this video have questions, you could call the Miami Valley Fair Housing Center at info or at 937-223-6035, or shoot us an email at info@mvfairhousing.com. You can also visit our website, mvfairhousing.com. And if you live outside of the city, we are the people that you should be calling if you are a victim of housing discrimination. If you're inside the city, you could call the City of Dayton Human Relations Council by calling 937-333-1403, or visit their website, daytonhrc.org. Thanks for viewing this video. Take a look at the links that we have provided in the notes, and come back to us when you want to gain more knowledge about fair housing.